Alright, so we're starting with our stainless steel tumbler, and I'm just going to screw our cup chuck directly into the tumbler to hold that on the turner while we're working. And I'm just going to attach this to my turner, and then I'm going to mix up 15 milliliters each part A and B epoxy, and then I'm going to apply just a small amount of my dispersion color directly into the epoxy. Make sure that you mix it up really good so that you don't have any streaks. And then we are just going to spread that epoxy over the entire tumbler. So just make sure that you do go back and forth to avoid any of the streaks, or make sure the coloring is spread out evenly. The epoxy does a pretty good job of making sure that it does spread out evenly, but just continue to go swipe it back and forth just to make sure you get a nice even layer, and don't forget the bottom. Once you have it fully coated, we're just going to let this fully cure before we move on to our next step. Using my silhouette, I went ahead and cut the design out on my double-sided tape here. Now remember, it will not cut fully through. This is not like vinyl. You don't need it to cut through both sides. So I'm just going to peel the backing off on one side here, and I'm going to line this up on my tumbler first to try and get it as close to straight or as even as I can. Once I have it lined up, I'm just going to stick that side down first, make sure that it is fully stuck to my tumbler, and I'm just going to use my little squeegee tool here just to make sure that I rub it out nice and smooth, because we don't want any air bubbles or creases in the tape, because that will show through. Now I'm just going around the tumbler, and I'm just carefully using that squeegee tool and just rubbing it down nice and smooth on my cup here and applying it over the entire tumbler. Then when we get to the edge of the tumbler, depending on how much you've trimmed off, you may have a little excess. You want to be careful there that you don't overlap them, because that line will show. So just make sure when you get to the edge, like right here, that you do trim off the excess before sticking that down. Now I'm just going around the top and the bottom of the tumbler, and I'm just trimming off any of that excess tape. Now to actually design our template here. So I am using two different colored micas, as well as a chunkier glitter and a strip of foil here. As far as my design, I just kind of wung it. I didn't go in any particular pattern to start with. Then once I had all of my colors on there and I knew what they were going to look like, I started going back in and filling in the extra spaces to kind of match those up. With this particular pattern, the way that it works is these stripes here, some of them will line up with the stripes on the back. Now, I did not match my colors. I didn't realize that whenever I was doing this. So if you want yours to match, that's just something to keep in mind ahead of time while you're working on this design, to make sure that the strip of tape that you pull off, if you want them to match, peel the same strip of tape on the back so that you can line up the same colors. So to apply my micas, you'll see removing this blue backing here, and then that is going to reveal the double-sided tape underneath. And I'm just using an eyeshadow brush, and I'm just kind of wiping the mica powder on and then wiping off any of that excess. For the glitter portion, because this was kind of a chunkier, thicker mix, I just dumped the glitter directly onto my space here, and then I'm making sure that I pat it down really well, and then I'll go back and I'll kind of pat it down and remove any specks of glitter that are sticking up, because I don't want those raised pieces in the final product. Don't forget to use your chip brush and just brush off any of those excess pieces of glitter so that they don't spread into your other lines. Then you'll just continue doing the same thing all the way around the tumbler until all of your paper backing has been removed and all of these spots are filled in. For the foil portion, I did not do that many stripes, so I just kind of did them in the best of pattern that I could. Now, I did put the tumbler back on my turner here for this part just so I could have two hands and I didn't have to lay it on my mat here. So I'm just using that same squeegee and I'm just making sure to really rub the foil in so that I don't have a bunch of pieces missing. If you find that not all of the pieces stuck to the tape, just go back in with the squeegee and kind of rub those pieces in till they go onto the tape. Once you finish with the pattern, now I'm just going in with Quick Coat from CCDIY, and I'm using the Quick Coat particularly on the spots with the glitter, just because I didn't want the glitter to spread when we go to epoxy it, and I wanted to make sure that they were laying as flat down as I could get them before we epoxy. If you are using Quick Coat for this step, just make sure that you do let it fully dry before you move on to epoxy, otherwise it could have a reaction to the epoxy. Now I went ahead and I mixed up, again, 15 milliliters each part A and B epoxy, and I am applying that to my entire tumbler, just being careful around the glitter spots so that if any specks did not stick down from the Quick Coat, that I'm not spreading them around. If you do have any pieces that kind of fell out or in a spot that you don't want them, just go back in with tweezers and you can just carefully remove those. Once you've fully covered your tumbler with the epoxy, just make sure that you let that fully cure. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to outline all of my stripes here, so you'll see that's why I wasn't as worried about some of the glitter or some of the mica going into and blending into each other, because we are going to cover those up with our vinyl strips here. So I'm using these pre-cut vinyl strips that I had. You can definitely use washi tape or nail filing tape in place of this instead. Then I'm going to go in and just outline each one of these sections individually. Now the middle portion here I am not as worried about as far as what color it's going to be or if my vinyl lines are evened out with the circle, because we are going to be covering that up. So I'm just using my X-Acto knife and I'm just trimming them down right to the edge. Now, as I mentioned earlier, my lines on the back are not the same colors for all of them, so some of them do look a little weird. So all that I did here was I just made sure that my vinyl stripping lines matched up to each other and that they did create those nice even points so that it does look like it matches up perfectly on the back here. For the very middle of the design, because I'm covering it up with a decal, I'm just going in with my X-Acto and I'm just making sure that all of my lines are trimmed so that I don't have an excess of vinyl stripping directly in the middle that will show through with my decal. So my decal, I'm just going to line that up and I'm going to place it directly over the center here. Now my decal does have a white ink backing so that it will show through no matter what the background color is. So if you're using water slide, just make sure that you have either a layer of white paint or something behind it so that it will show through if you use darker colors like I did here. Now I just mixed up 10 milliliters each part A and B epoxy, and we're going to apply that over the entire tumbler, let that cure, and then we'll do one more final coat. Not shown in the video, for the bottom of my tumbler, I did mix up the same color glitter that I used here, and I just applied that to the bottom of the tumbler mixed with my epoxy. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more fun, crafty tutorials, don't forget to like and subscribe.